Vergil Ortiz versus Maurice Hooker. Knuckleheads, welcome to the post-fight show, reaction, discussion, whatever you want to call it. Man, Vergil Ortiz was impressive tonight. But I'll be honest with you guys. This was exactly the fight that I envisioned in the prediction. I said he'd get finished in the 6th round or beyond. It was at the 6th round when he got dropped. You know, I felt like I saw this fight in a dream or something, you know? By the way, cheers. This is Get It Right Saturday night, so whatever you're doing, whatever you're partaking in, whatever you're enjoying, I hope you enjoy it responsibly. Saturday night with the homies. Appreciate you guys being here. A big shout out to our sponsor, Nueva Real Estate. So, I saw this from the get-go. This was the prediction. I'm not always spot on the predictions. I'm pretty good. But I got to say, I was spot on this one, man. Everything that I thought was going against Maurice Hooker in this bout went against Maurice Hooker in this bout. I said, listen, this is his first fight at welterweight. Vergil Ortiz is not the guy you want to fight for your first fight at welterweight. He's not the guy you want to fight your first fight at welterweight with. That's what Maurice Hooker did. He paid the price. At the same time, you got to give big respect to Maurice Hooker because he did not need to take this fight. He could have taken a much easier fight. He could have given himself the chance to acclimate to 147 pounds, which he never did, you guys. This is a guy who 2 fights ago lost to Jose Ramirez. In his last fight, fought an unknown at a catchweight and decided to take his first welterweight bout against one of the hottest prospects in Vergil Ortiz in all of boxing. So you have to compliment this guy on his courage, on his bravery. But I said it from the outset, not the smartest move. He had a long layoff on top of it. And I just felt like we saw Maurice Hooker's demise, right? As far as the way he fights, it's not going to work for him against guys like Vergil Ortiz and guys like Jose Ramirez. We saw what happened to him in front of Jose Ramirez when he decided to get into those crazy exchanges, man. He just doesn't have the body, the physicality. He just doesn't have the physicality to get in those kind of exchanges on a consistent basis through a 12-round fight with, these guys that are just more physical than him. I mean, he really should have used his reach a bit more like he was at the beginning of the fight. He should have stuck to it. He should have used his reach a bit more. But he just eventually fell victim to a dogfight, pretty much. Vergil Ortiz knew he had to close the distance on this man who has got an 80-inch reach. I'm talking about Maurice Hooker. And Vergil Ortiz just went violent at him. And, he knew exactly what he had to do. Again, I mean, he's the natural welterweight. Hooker's coming up from junior welterweight. He's skinnier. Go after the body. He said he went after the head. He felt like Hooker could take some good shots to the head. He decided to switch the body. He hurt Hooker in the 5th and in the 6th. In the 6th, he actually dropped him. Hooker got back up, put on a hell of a valiant performance. In the 7th round, he got finished. And when he went down, he got hit with a right hand, and then he went down, and his arm, he was kind of cradling his arm as if it were damaged. They were saying his elbow was knocked out of place potentially. Also, I saw when they pulled off his glove, he was pointing at his hand. He was showing his hand to people, including Vergil Ortiz. So it looks like, if his hand isn't broken or fractured, then his elbow is dislocated. Probably both, but at the very least for me, it looked like his hand was fractured. That being said, do I think that's the reason he lost the fight? No, I think, I think his hands, his elbows, his guard was failing him in there against Vergil Ortiz. Again, bigger, stronger guy, and he was just getting broken down. And that right hand, man, that was just too much. I mean, Vergil Ortiz is in there throwing everything with bad intentions, and despite the fact that Vergil Ortiz had a fantastic performance tonight, right? It was a fantastic performance, a fantastic showing in front of his home crowd and Maurice Hooker's. I do want to criticize a few things. Please forgive me. Cheers. I do want to criticize a few things about Vergil Ortiz. As much as I love the fact, right? And I'm going to preface this by saying Vergil Ortiz got hit a lot in this fight, right? And his face was marked up. And that's to be expected when you go in there against a very live former world champion and a guy like Maurice Hooker, who's got a big reach advantage over you and, knows what he's doing in there. But my complaint about Vergil Ortiz tonight, probably above and beyond anything else, is the fact that, and he has this habit, right? When he throws his shots, he's putting everything behind the shots, and he's not only projecting a little bit, but as he's throwing the shots, he's flinging his head, right? It's almost like, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the Danny Garcia kind of no-look left hook, and he does that because he feels like he's getting maximum velocity on the punch, right? When he turns his head. But the problem with that is he was getting caught between punches, and he was getting caught when his, head was in that space where he was, kind of extending more than he has to because he is turning his whole head and everything else into these shots. I mean, he's putting so much into these shots that it is leaving him open, and I felt like Maurice Hooker was capitalizing on that and capitalized on it multiple times, right? And that's why, and this is habitual for Vergil Ortiz, who, again, I'm not saying he's bad. He's only 22 years old. He put on a great performance. I think the kid's got incredible potential, and I definitely think he's going to be a world champion at some point. But he's talking about wanting to fight Terrence Crawford. And if Maurice Hooker is able to counter you when you're throwing, your whole freaking soul into every single punch that you're throwing out there and leaving yourself out there kind of, and you're getting countered, if Maurice Hooker is able to do it, man, Terrence Crawford is going to touch you. And as much as I appreciate the courage and the bravery and the Crawford talk and the Spence talk and stuff like that, I don't think that Terrence Crawford is a good fight for Vergil Ortiz next. Listen, Vergil Ortiz is a decade younger than these guys, man. He needs to continue to fight. I agree with what Maurice Hooker says. He's not ready for these guys yet. He needs to continue to fight. I'll say that I think Vergil Ortiz, his style is probably better against a guy like Errol Spence, right? Who's not as crafty as a Terrence Crawford, in my opinion. I think Terrence Crawford is a bit more of a technical wizard, and he's going to see what I saw tonight and what a lot of people saw, what Maurice Hooker saw, who's his stablemate, it looks like, and trains with him. He's going to see what Hooker saw and what we saw, Knuckleheads, and he is going to capitalize on the fact that when Vergil Ortiz throws a punch, he takes a picture of it, but he also overextends and leaves himself out there to get countered. And that's not going to bode well for him if he fights Terrence Crawford next. I think he'd do better against Errol Spence. But again, I think that's rushing it, man. Look, these guys are in their early 30s. And Vergil Ortiz is in his early 20s. I think he's ahead of his class. I think Vergil Ortiz, is beyond where Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, all the rest of them were at 22. At least that's what it looks like to me. I think by the time, he reaches his prime, he's going to be an absolute nightmare. I mean, look, he's already an absolute nightmare, but I don't like him rushing into a fight against Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford. I do think that he's got balls and would do it and would probably put up a great fight against either one of them. I think, though, his style would be better against Errol Spence. I think a guy like Terrence Bud Crawford at this point just knows too damn much. He knows too damn much, man. So that being said, big shout out to all of you guys in here. Damn, we got Soap Boxing Podcast in here, man. I'm pumped about that. I've been wanting to get the coach from that channel on this show. That's Coach Derek Collinsworth, man. He's got some world-class kids he's been training. That's a guy I would love on this show. RLS. Let me see what's going on in here. Before I continue, though, shout out to our sponsor, Nueva Real Estate. You can follow them on Instagram at Nueva Real Estate for all your California real estate needs. Let them know the Fighters Rep sent you. Follow me on Instagram at FightersRep or at George FightersRep. You can get in touch with me through there or, through here. Doesn't matter. Finally, be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it. Help me grow this channel. Hit the join button. By clicking join, it's only 16 cents a day. That's $5 a month. You help me build this channel and the promotion. Finally, if you want to contribute and get something back for it as well, get your Fighters Rep gear in the links below. By the way, if you join, you get a discount to that. So let me go ahead and, continue into the chat here. See what you guys are talking about, man. Man, that was an awesome fight to watch, though. I'm kind of buzzing about it. I know the UFC's right on. Typically, we go live after the boxing and the UFC, but I wanted to go live immediately because the UFC fight, Brunson versus Holland, not a huge event, so I decided to go live immediately after the boxing match. RLS. Shout out to you, man. I've never seen you in here. Appreciate you being in here. He says, props to Hooker. Ortiz got tested in a few exchanges. Ortiz is savage. I agree, man. Big props to Hooker, man. That's one of the things, I was thinking about throughout the fight, man. Like, this guy's got some courage, man. This guy deserves a lot of credit for moving up from junior welterweight directly to a savage welterweight like Vergil Ortiz, man. And make no mistake, man, Vergil Ortiz is just, this kid's like a modern day Aztec warrior. He's even got like an Aztec emblem on his trunks. He knows, he knows the lineage he comes from, man. He's trying to get in there and finish you. And it's amazing to me that a kid in Vergil Ortiz with so much fast twitch sort of muscle, if you ask me. He's not, a physical specimen or anything. I'm not saying, by looking at him, he's pleasing to the eye or whatever. What I'm saying is he's got so much fast twitch muscle, when he's throwing his punches, they're fast, they're crisp, they're hard, and he doesn't seem to tire the way a normal person, I think, with throwing with that kind of velocity would tire. So I'm just really impressed by the kid. Maybe it's being 22 years old. Who knows, man? But the kid's got, energy for days, amazing velocity. But yeah, back to the topic at hand. I think Maurice Hooker deserves a lot of credit. A part of me wants to see Maurice Hooker continue to fight, continue to win, continue to succeed. Unfortunately, the way boxing works, kind of unlike MMA and my sport, kickboxing, is if you lose once or twice, man, your stock kind of goes, the way of the dinosaur, unfortunately. And I disagree with that. I think that these guys should be treasured regardless. They go into the ring, they should be respected. And a warrior like Maurice Hooker should absolutely be respected. I just think he chose the wrong fight today, man. He was coaxed into this dog fight, man. He should have tried to continue to use his reach in this fight, man. Try to keep it more technical. But I don't know. It's easier said than done when you got Vergil Ortiz, coming after you like a bat out of hell. Soapboxing podcast says Ortiz should not go near Bud yet. I agree with that, man. And when you've got Soapboxing podcasts co-sign on that one, man, you're talking right. You're talking about you're saying the right thing, basically. I agree, man. He's not ready for Bud Crawford. John Oliver, unbelievable performance by Ortiz, but Vergil is still a kid at 22 years old. I agree. Still a baby. He's still a baby. What's the rush? Why throw him in there against a Terrence Crawford or an Errol Spence? Listen, all power to you if you want to fight those guys, but especially Bud Crawford, man, that one's scary for me. Soapboxing podcast says, you know what you were looking at, bro. I appreciate you. Coach. I'm just telling it like I see it, man. He was getting caught in between punches, Hooker was catching him between punches, timing him, and, again, I mean, when you throw with everything in a punch, you really amplify your opponent's ability to counter you, man. And again, I don't like it. I don't like when he turns his head. He throws a punch and turns his head. He's trying to get every little bit of power into all these punches. Again, it makes me think of Danny Garcia's left hook. Sometimes Shane Mosley used to do it too. He would just throw everything into that hook and just, turning his head, looking the other way. You can't do that in boxing because that's when you're at your most vulnerable. At least that's the way I feel, when you're like that. I mean, how many times have we seen a guy overextend or overexert himself in the ring, and on the way back, that's when he gets caught with something. You know what I mean? That's when you don't see the punches coming. So I think he's got to tighten up. Maybe he can, go see Coach Derek Collinsworth at Soapboxing Podcast. Tell him to tighten up a bit, You don't got to turn your head. Keep your eye on your opponent, at least your peripherals, kind of stay in it. You know what I mean? Don't give somebody the opportunity to counter you. I mean, and you saw it, his eyes, his cheekbones were all red. They were swollen because, he was getting caught. And also, I mean, he did mention Maurice Hooker going around his guard. He was doing that. But it was also because, when I'm throwing a punch, if this part of my face is exposed, that's the part of my face that's going to eat the shot. This side and this side, that's what I was seeing. Anyway, Ortiz versus Ugas. I like that fight. That fight makes a lot more sense for me. Boxing Guru says too soon for him and gets touched too much right now. He does. And look, let's not take credit away from Maurice Hooker, you guys. Let's not do that. Let's not take credit away from Maurice Hooker. This is a former champion. This guy knows what he's doing in there. But, he has a habit of getting into these dog fights, into these exchanges with guys that are just more physically able to deal with those exchanges than him. It happened with Ramirez. That's why I said he's moving up to welterweight. Ortiz is a bigger Ramirez, a bigger, more explosive, more athletic Ramirez. And that's why I predicted a 6th round or onwards knockout in the second half of the fight. That's exactly what happened. I felt like he would get brought into another dogfight, lured into another dogfight. Because look, yeah, he's boxing. At the beginning, he's boxing from the outside, right? He's trying to use his reach. But these fighters, man, they a lot of the times they run on instinct and they cannot quell that instinct. Some of these guys, you hit them, they see red, and they just want to mix it up with you. And there's certain guys you just cannot mix it up with. And, Jose Ramirez comes to mind. Vergil Ortiz comes to mind. I mean, these are tough kids, man, with fast hands and big power. And that's why I predicted the late knockout. Now, a lot of people, may question why I thought it would be a late knockout if I think Vergil Ortiz is bigger and faster and more athletic than Jose Ramirez. Well, the reason that I thought it would, last a bit longer is because Maurice Hooker was moving up in weight, right? When you move up in weight like that, you don't got to cut so much weight. The chin becomes sturdier, you guys. The chin becomes sturdier. You'll see it time and time again, especially in kickboxing, in MMA. You see that a lot, right? When guys move up, the chin gets a bit sturdier. Where I did see it in boxing, I'm a boxing nerd, man. A lot of you guys may not have even seen this, but where I did see it in boxing, right? A great example of this, in my opinion, was Tony Bellew. I've always loved Tony Bellew. He's a fighter from the UK, and he sort of made a name for himself. I want to say it was at the light heavyweight division, but the guy's like 6'2", 6'3", and he just looked like a twig at light heavyweight. And I remember he came over to challenge Adonis Stevenson, and I was rooting for Bellew, man, because, I like the guy. I thought he talks a lot and he's crazy and he just wants to fight everybody, and I enjoyed him. And I remember Adonis Stevenson knocked him out. It was at light heavyweight, I believe. I want to say it was at light heavyweight, super middleweight or light heavyweight. Adonis Stevenson knocks him out. The guy eventually goes up all the way to cruiserweight, right? Where he wins a world title against a guy who hits a lot harder. And I believe his name is Ilunga Makabu. Hits a lot harder than Adonis Stevenson. I mean, I know Adonis Stevenson's got one of the biggest punches in boxing, but this Makabu guy can hit, and he's up at cruiserweight. You know what I mean? So for me, a cruiserweight, I know middleweights that can hit like heavyweights, but I just felt like this guy at cruiserweight packed a huge punch. We also saw Bellew in there. I mean, against David Haye, we saw him in there. He got finished by Usyk, but way later on in the fight. And I think it's because he was able to rehydrate and, sort of keep, his body's integrity by not having to cut so much weight. He never got finished again in the fashion that he got finished against Adonis Stevenson, despite fighting some big punchers and some scary guys. So that's the only reason I thought Hooker would last a bit longer in this fight. Let's see here. Ortiz is only 22. He continues to grow. I agree with that. Listen, he's young. He's a baby. 22 is a dude. Think about where you were at 22. What were you doing at 22? Oh, we were a mess. You didn't know how to wipe your backside at 22. John Oliver says, like Blue Corner Boxing, Ortiz versus Ugas, ready for that work. I think Ortiz beats Ugas, man. Ortiz versus Ugas next is a good fight. I agree with that. Ortiz versus Teofimo Lopez, 2023. Come on, man. It could happen. It could happen. Ortiz versus Teofimo could really happen, man. And Teofimo's a bad boy, man. Teofimo's a bad boy. My only worry for Teofimo is, he's so talented. He's so talented at 135 or 140, but I don't know if Teofimo Lopez has the frame for 147 pounds, man. That's going to be a challenge for him because, I don't know, for me, he seems like a pretty short dude, you know what I mean? And some of these 147 pounders, I mean, look, Vergil Ortiz is 5'10", man. Maurice Hooker, 5'11". So almost damn near 6 feet tall. I mean, what's Teofimo Lopez? Let's look him up. Teofimo Lopez is a shorty. And that's going to be a huge problem. 5'8". I guess he's not as small as I thought. But they like to exaggerate on they like to exaggerate their height online. Let's see here. Mad Dog 8 says Ortiz started with the body shots early. Yeah, I mean, I thought those body shots. I thought those body shots are kind of what were the beginning to the end for Maurice Hooker. Cheers, by the way, guys. Cheers. Big shout out to all of you being in here, man. I appreciate you guys joining. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. We put out content almost every day at 7 p.m. Love hearing what you guys have to say. And, you know, this was a big fight tonight, man, for hardcore boxing heads. So I appreciate all of you guys being in here. Let's hear Soap Boxing Podcast says plenty of ability and plenty of time. Keep seasoning. I agree with that. 1,000,000%. Soap Boxing Podcast says Hooker was game AF. I agree, man. Survived the early onslaught. Started tattooing the youngster. Didn't think he would upset Ortiz or nothing, but it was only going to get rougher. Would love to see a rematch. That's interesting. George Estrada says the king is back. What's going on, Modelo Time? Appreciate you being in here, brother. George Estrada, my man. You know, Soul Boxing Podcast, you mentioned the rematch. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch, you know, but what I want to see, and this is me putting my promoter hat on, but also my boxing fan hat on, right? I want to see somebody, you know, guide Maurice Hooker properly. I want to see somebody guide Maurice Hooker, get him a fight at 147 before just throwing him in there with the hottest, you know, rising star in the division like they did tonight. I mean, I thought that was a mistake. You know, again, on this channel, I constantly take digs and take issue with the fact that in boxing you have these A-side versus B-side fights. You know, they manufacture these guys' careers, and, you know, they go to a different country or different territory. They get to 5-0, 10-0, then they sell these fighters to a promoter. And they kind of insult our intelligence by building up these false heroes. But So part of me applauds, right? So part of me applauds what Maurice Hooker did here. I was a champ at 140 pounds. I'm going right up to 147. I mean, he did have that fight against, I think his name was Uriel Perez at the 144 or something like that. But it's not the same. I mean, you're jumping up from 140 to 144 to 147 straight in against Vergil Ortiz. It's just poor, you know, it's just not respectful to a former champion of Maurice Hooker. And look, not just to a former champion. I mean, I would, if I was the promoter, I'd be like, I'd tell him, look, I'd love to have you, man, but are you sure? Like, you want to go right in there? Like, not a promoter. If I was a manager, I would tell him, like, dude, let's take a fight at 147. Let's get acclimated to the division. A fight, 2 fights. You're going to jump right in there against Vergil Ortiz. I mean, the reward was pretty high, right? The reward was high. The risk-reward assessment, though, I felt like the reward was high, but the risk was huge. The risk was huge. And, again, I respect him. I disagree. I disagree with the guidance. I mean, 1 fight, 2 fight, give the guy something. Who's Uriel Perez at 144 pounds? Nobody's heard. And then let's not forget, at 140, right before he left to 144 to fight this guy that nobody's ever heard of in Uriel Perez, at 140, his last fight at 140, he got knocked out. And it wasn't, let's be honest with ourselves here. I mean, Jose Ramirez, you know, didn't just barely knock Maurice Hooker out. I mean, that was pretty vicious what Jose Ramirez did to Maurice Hooker in that fight, you know. I remember it being a vicious stoppage. I mean, I remember this guy's head snapping back over the top rope. He was getting hit so hard. And a lot of those shots were landed as his body was up against the ropes, you know, kind of helpless. So I just think it's poor decision making. It's part of the reason I love our rule set so much, at Fighters Rep. I love our rule set, because we kind of don't have the kicks below the knees that I think destroy fighters' careers if they take too many of them. It's just stand and bang at Fighters Rep. There's no clinching, there's no grappling. It's pure kickboxing, but there's no kicks below the knees, and it's stuff like that you have to implement, right? It's things like that you have to think about to prolong the fighters' careers, man. These people need longevity. Anyway, Soul Boxing Podcast says, yes, he's not done. He should definitely not be done. Julian Villanueva says, Hooker versus Brooks. Hooker versus Kell Brook. That would be, that wouldn't be bad. I mean, that's assuming Kell Brook will come back. I think Amir Khan is in talks with Eddie Hearn. And so I would imagine that the fight Amir Khan wants to make, who's, another guy in the twilight of his career, but doesn't mean he doesn't deserve a payday. All these fighters deserve a payday. Amir Khan is in talks with Eddie Hearn. I would imagine Kell Brook is going to be the guy that gets that fight. I would, if I'm, look, a fight to make for Maurice Hooker, I think is Regis Prograis fighting at 147. Was Regis Prograis' last fight at 147? I'm not saying Regis Prograis. I'm saying that guy he beat, Juan Heraldez or something like that. I mean, you want to give Hooker in his next fight a guy at 147 who's coming off of a loss. I think that's what you want to do. A guy who's pretty good, coming off of a loss, someone, it'll be a crossroads fight. Someone will get their confidence back. Maybe the guy that Regis Prograis knocked down, I want to say Juan Heraldez. Let's take a look at Regis Prograis' record here. Let's see if, man, we've had Prograis on the channel here. Juan Heraldez, that's the guy. Maybe a guy like that, although I think Regis might still be at light welterweight or junior welterweight, so that might not work. But, somebody like that, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you don't just, throw him in there against, King Kong. Let's see here. Soap Boxing Podcast. Julian, Hooker stops Kell. I agree with that. He's damaged goods. I agree with that bad, man. Man, what a shame will happen to Kell Brook. I think I look back at Kell Brook's career fondly, man. When he beat Sean Porter, I said to myself, man, this guy can really fight. And then they made the mistake of fighting Triple G, man. I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake for Kell Brook. I think that ruined Kell Brook. In the following fight, he put up a hell of a fight against Spence. But then the other eye went. Just a real shame that he is damaged goods. That's exactly what it is. And it sucks, man. But I think Amir Khan is a bit damaged goods too. So I think you can see that fight happening. So Boxing Podcast says, no, it was 40. Regis weighed 42. I see. That Floyd fighter was undefeated. Yeah, I mean, we gotta. Let me know, you guys. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think is a good fight for Maurice Hooker coming up? Considering that, he's coming off this loss, and we want to get him back in there and see if he can, get a win under his belt. We need to get him in there and see if he can get a win under his belt. Yeah. I think a guy like Heraldez is a good opponent if he were to make 147. That's the first one that popped into my head. But yeah, he needs a winnable fight. Absolutely. Soap Boxing Podcast has absolutely ruined him. He needs a winnable fight. He's talking about it ruined him. When he says he ruined him, I think he's talking about Kell Brook. fighting Triple G. I mean, you went up like 2 weight classes to fight Triple G, who is an absolute menace. Let's not forget, as much as I'm a Canelo Alvarez fan, right? As much as I'm a Canelo Alvarez fan and I make fun of everybody that hates on Canelo Alvarez, Triple G, in my opinion, if I'm a judge, and I believe I really understand and comprehend judging criteria. I mean, I've read the stupid ABC rules. I'm an attorney. I'm a dork. I follow this stuff. I thought Triple G clearly won that first fight against Canelo. And the second fight was very close for me. I was okay with the decision. I didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole if I were a judge in the second fight. But the first fight, I thought Triple G won. And my point is, they had Triple G in there against a guy in Kell Brook. And and that was that Triple G, the one that could beat Canelo. Like, I don't think Triple G's there anymore. I'll be honest, I think if Canelo fought Triple G now, Triple G would get beat, maybe get hurt, even though he looked pretty good in his last fight. But yeah, the Triple G that fought Kell Brook was, man, that might have been the best. That might have been one of the best fighters in boxing at the time. I mean, that guy was an animal, man. That guy was an animal. So yeah, man, that really did Kell Brook in. And it's a shame. It's a shame because Kell Brook was such a fantastic fighter. Let's see. G won the first fight. I agree with that. No bigger Canelo fan than me, George. That's true. That's true. I know you're a big Canelo fan. As am I. I love Canelo Alvarez, man. People hate on him like crazy, but that's how you know he's doing something right. Bringing up Regis Prograis, as I typed Regis Prograis into Google, one of the first pictures that comes up, actually the first picture that comes up next, his name is Josh Taylor, followed by Jose Ramirez. I mean, holy shit, man, that fight. If you are a boxing fan, that is the fight, man. That is the fight. Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. I mean, I still gotta say, one of the manliest, most intriguing, hype moments for me, right, in recent years in boxing, and a lot of people may have skipped over this, and a lot of people may think me weird for saying this. But when they did that, that sit down they do over in the UK where they have the fighters, face off and talk to each other, and you've got the mediator in the middle. When Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis sat across from each other, you guys, holy shit. Hey, you guys got to go watch that. If you haven't watched it, you got to go watch it. I mean, there was one moment, right? There was a few moments, but there was this one moment where Regis Prograis was talking about being intimidated, and so was Josh Taylor. They were on the subject of intimidation. And the mediator asked Josh Taylor if he thought Regis Prograis could be intimidated. And Josh Taylor said he could. And Regis Prograis was like, I can't be intimidated. And Josh Taylor and him lock eyes, right? And Taylor's locking eyes with him and like almost biting his lip. And he says something like, it is, in that deep Scottish accent, man. It was just fucking testosterone everywhere, man, when that shit happened. That shit was gangster, dude. He said, I see right through your bravado, he told Regis Prograis. I see right through it. And Regis was like, you don't see nothing in my eyes. You don't see nothing. He said, I see right through it. Man, I thought they were going to get up and throw down right there. I was tingling, man. I felt like Spider-Man. My spidey senses were tingling. I was like, holy shit. They better have security for these two guys. Because these are the two most competitive human beings on the planet right now. And if you saw that fight, that was a great fight. I mean, I thought it was a close fight. I did think Josh Taylor won. But, man, to the very bitter end, I mean, Regis Prograis was in that fight. I thought the last 3 rounds, like, he really came on. But Josh Taylor, man, can fight his fucking ass off, bro. And him and Jose Ramirez, bro, yes, green light, bro, all day long. I want to watch that shit. Hooker versus Sergey Lipinets. I'm okay with that. Is Lipinets at welterweight? I wonder if Lipinets is at welterweight, but I'm good with that. That's a good confidence booster, Julian. I like that. I appreciate that. I like your management skills. You should get your license. Salt Boxing Podcast says special fighter Canelo Alvarez. I agree, man. By the way, my kid is fighting on Triller Show April 17th. Prograis Red Catch is main. Dang. Which one is it? Let me know which one it is, and maybe we can get them on the show or something, man. But anyway, knuckleheads, I've talked your ears off. I appreciate you guys joining me. Fantastic performance again for Vergil Ortiz. But is he ready for Terrence Crawford? You know, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You know what I mean? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's give this kid, who's just 22 years old, right? Let's give him some time to reach his prime. I mean, he's not even close to it, right? And let's give him some time to develop. He just beat a very tough guy today. I think we also got to show a lot of love and respect for Maurice Hooker, man. A lot of love and respect for Maurice Hooker. You know, you want to get behind these guys that put up performances like this and fall short. You want to support them, man, because this culture will turn their back on them. And I think that's horseshit. So, you know, we got to do it. Quentin Randall 7-0. At the Quick Draw, right? I think his nickname is Quick Draw, right? I've been seeing that kid, man. That kid looks really good, really rangy kid. And I think with Coach Derek Collinsworth guidance, he's going places, man. Congrats on him, Coach. Getting on that show, man. I'm sure they're paying pretty well, too. Houston, we have a problem. Anyway, knuckleheads, I'm going to get off here. I'm going to go watch the UFC, which, you know, I probably missed by now, but maybe go watch on the replay or something. And we'll talk soon. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon next to it. Like the video so the YouTube algorithm shows me some love, man. I've been, working on this channel a lot lately, trying to grow it. So definitely do that. And if you want to join or get your Fighters Rep gear in the link